The wind howled through the deserted streets of Ravenswood, a small town tucked deep in the forests of Maine. Even in broad daylight, there was a chill that seemed to crawl under your skin, a sensation that something unseen was watching. Jason and Emily had been best friends since childhood, and today, curiosity had dragged them to a place locals whispered about but never dared to visit: Hollow Lake, an abandoned park with a sinister history. Jason adjusted his backpack nervously as Emily tugged at his sleeve. "Come on, Jason. It's been months since we did something fun. Don't chicken out now." Jason swallowed hard. "I don't know. This place gives me a bad vibe. Nobody's here. Look around." The park was eerily empty, the air thick with mist. The lake, hidden behind overgrown trees, shimmered under the gray sunlight like a dark mirror. Emily ignored him and pointed toward a crumbling stone monument near the lake's edge. "See that? This was built over a century ago. People say the lake has a spirit." Jason laughed nervously. "Spirit? What do you mean?" Emily's eyes darkened. "They say a woman died here long ago. They called her the Lady of Hollow Lake. Nobody knows exactly what happened, but every year someone disappears. And her death anniversary, well, that's today." Jason shivered. He could feel goosebumps creeping up his arms. Maybe we shouldn't." A sudden rustling from the woods silenced him. Emily gripped his hand, her face pale. A soft cry echoed across the lake, a sound that wasn't human, almost like the wail of a trapped animal. The mist seemed to thicken, curling around their feet like fingers, and the air grew icy cold, making every breath visible. "Did you hear that?" Jason whispered. Emily nodded, her lips trembling. "It's her, she's here." Before Jason could protest, Emily started walking toward the lake, her movements almost trance-like. Jason followed reluctantly. The surface of the water rippled even though there was no wind. Then, just as they reached the edge, they saw her. A woman, standing knee-deep in the lake, her skin pale as moonlight. Her eyes glowed a terrifying red, her long hair tangled with weeds, and her mouth stretched in a twisted smile that seemed impossible for a human face. Her dress, torn and soaked, clung to her like the shadows themselves. Jason stumbled back. "What?" Emily grabbed his arm. "Stay calm, that's her. The lady." The figure raised her hands, long fingernails scraping the water as she whispered in a voice that sounded like broken glass. "Leave or join me forever." The air suddenly felt heavy, like invisible chains were trying to pull them down. Jason's heart raced. Every instinct screamed to run, but the mist seemed alive, swirling around them, forming shapes that looked like distorted faces, each one silently screaming. Jason and Emily froze. Fear clawed at their throats. Then, with terrifying speed, she lunged. Jason barely grabbed Emily as the water hissed and churned, spraying icy droplets on their faces. They scrambled backward, slipping over wet stones, heart pounding, lungs burning. The lake seemed endless, its dark waters stretching farther than they could see, reflecting not the sky, but a black void. The figure's laugh echoed across the lake, sharp and cruel, like shards of glass in their ears. Emily screamed, her voice mingling with the haunting sound. Jason felt a pressure behind him, a cold hand brushing against his shoulder. But when he spun, there was nothing. The lake went silent. The figure had vanished, but not before leaving a faint echo of laughter that lingered like a warning in the mist. Shadows seemed to move with intent, curling around the trees and rocks as if watching their every move. Emily gasped. She's real, Jason. She wants revenge, and she doesn't forgive." Jason, trembling, nodded. "Then we need to leave now." They ran through the overgrown paths, every snap of a twig underfoot sounding like a scream. The fog thickened, swallowing the path ahead. Shapes flickered at the edges of their vision, faces, hands, mouths open in silent terror. The further they ran, the more the town behind them seemed to vanish, replaced by the endless dark of the forest and the whispering lake. Suddenly, Jason tripped over a root. He fell hard, scraping his palms and knees. Emily stopped, panic rising in her eyes. "Jason!" "Get up!" As he struggled, the mist condensed near the lake, and a faint silhouette emerged. A hand reached out, long and skeletal, with fingers curling like black smoke. Emily grabbed Jason, yanking him to his feet. "Don't look back," she shouted. But the sound of dripping water and that unnatural, hollow laughter followed them, echoing in their minds long after they were gone. Even after reaching the relative safety of the town, both of them knew Hollow Lake was not done. Its curse lingered, and the Lady of the Lake would wait, patient and eternal, until the next curious soul wandered too close. The night after Jason and Emily's terrifying encounter, sleep felt impossible. Jason lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above him, but all he could see was the pale figure rising from the lake. The faint echo of her laughter still rang in his ears, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw those glowing red eyes staring back. Emily, on the other hand, wasn't afraid. She was obsessed. She called Jason the next morning, her voice trembling with excitement instead of fear. "We have to go back. I need to know what she wants." Jason almost dropped his phone. "Go back? Are you insane? We barely made it out alive." But Emily insisted. She had been reading old town records late into the night and discovered a chilling history tied to Hollow Lake. In 1913, a young woman named Margaret Hale had drowned there under mysterious circumstances. Locals believed she was betrayed by someone she loved, and her spirit had cursed the lake ever since. Jason tried to argue, but deep down, a gnawing curiosity matched Emily's determination. By afternoon, they were standing once again at the edge of Hollow Lake. The air was colder than yesterday, the mist even heavier. Emily pulled out her phone and began recording. "If something happens, the world has to know." But Jason shook his head. "If something happens, no one will ever find us." The two made their way to the crumbling stone monument Emily had pointed out before. This time, Jason noticed something he had missed. The monument was carved with strange symbols, spirals and jagged lines that didn't look like anything human. The edges were worn, but he could make out one phrase scratched into the base: "She rises with blood." Jason felt his stomach twist. "Emily, this isn't just some ghost story. This place is cursed." Before Emily could respond, a sudden splash came from the lake. They both turned. The water rippled violently, though no one was in sight. Jason's heart raced as he pulled Emily back, but she resisted. The mist began to thicken, rolling across the ground like living smoke. Out of the fog, a shadow emerged. The figure of a woman, taller than before, her dripping hair trailing across the stones. Her face was clearer now, sharp cheekbones, sunken eyes, and a smile that revealed teeth too long to be human. Jason froze, but Emily stepped forward, whispering, "Margaret." The figure tilted its head as if acknowledging her name. Then the air grew colder. Jason's breath came out in white clouds, and he felt his chest tighten as though invisible hands were squeezing his lungs. Suddenly, the lady's voice pierced the silence, low and broken. "Betrayal must be paid." Emily dropped to her knees, clutching her head in agony, as though the words were drilling into her skull. Jason grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away, but the figure raised one long, skeletal finger and pointed directly at him. The monument behind them cracked, a piece of stone crumbling to the ground. Beneath it, Jason saw something horrifying: human bones, piled in the earth like discarded dolls. Dozens of them, skulls, ribs, femurs, each one gnawed, broken, and stained dark. Jason's stomach lurched. This wasn't just a place of death. It was a graveyard. Emily screamed as invisible force yanked her toward the lake. Jason held on with all his strength, but her shoes scraped against the stones, as if an unseen hand was dragging her. The water churned violently, the lady's laughter echoing through the mist. "Jason!" Emily cried, tears streaking her face. "She won't stop. She wants one of us." Jason pulled harder, but in that moment he realized the truth. The lady wasn't just haunting the lake, she was feeding it. With one last surge, Jason dragged Emily back, and they stumbled into the woods, branches whipping their faces. The laughter faded, but the mist followed them, curling through the trees like claws. When they finally reached Jason's truck and slammed the doors shut, both were gasping for air. Jason's hands shook on the wheel. "We're done, Emily. We're never going back." But as he started the engine, Emily turned to him, her voice eerily calm. "No, Jason. She's not finished with us. And if we don't figure out what she wants..." Her eyes were hollow, as though something had already changed inside her. "She'll come to find us." The night after their terrifying return to Hollow Lake, Jason couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the lady's pale face and those glowing red eyes staring into his soul. Emily wasn't doing any better. Her hands shook constantly, and she kept murmuring about the whisper she had heard in the water. Jason tried to convince her that it was over, that they just needed time to forget. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. The lady hadn't let them go. She had marked them. A town in fear. The next day, Jason went into town to clear his mind. But what he found disturbed him even more. People were whispering about a missing teenager, a boy named Daniel who hadn't come home after fishing near Hollow Lake 2 nights ago. His boat was found drifting, empty near the same crumbling monument Jason and Emily had seen. When Jason asked an old storekeeper about the lake, the man's face went pale. "You shouldn't even say its name," the old man warned. "The Lady of Hollow Lake, she doesn't just haunt the water anymore. She takes those who disturb her." Jason felt his stomach twist. Emily and he hadn't just disturbed her. They had looked directly into her eyes. Emily's descent that evening, Jason visited Emily. She looked worse than before. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her voice cracked when she spoke. "Jason, she comes to me at night," Emily whispered. "She stands by my window, dripping wet, her hair covering her face. She doesn't speak, but I know what she wants. She wants me." Jason tried to calm her down, but her bedroom was freezing cold despite the heater running. The mirror across the room was fogged, and faint words had appeared on the glass as though written by a wet finger. "One of you must stay." Jason's heart stopped. Emily screamed, pointing at the corner. For a split second, Jason thought he saw a figure crouching there, a pale woman with twisted limbs. But when he blinked, the corner was empty. The pool of the lake by the following weekend, Emily was no longer herself. She barely ate, barely spoke, and would sit staring at nothing for hours. Jason begged her to get help, but she only whispered, "She's calling me back. If I don't go, she'll come here." Jason tried to resist, but he knew he couldn't let Emily face this alone. Against every instinct in his body, he agreed to take her back to Hollow Lake. The park was even more desolate than before. The air felt heavier, charged with something unnatural. As they approached the lake, Jason noticed something horrifying: footprints in the mud leading into the water. Bare feet, small, like a child's. But they didn't come back out. Emily knelt at the edge of the lake, her reflection shimmering in the dark water. "She says she was betrayed," Emily muttered. "She says she lost everything. And now she takes what she wants." Jason grabbed her arm. "Emily, stop! This isn't you talking." But before he could pull her away, the water rippled violently. A pale hand shot out, grabbing Emily's wrist with bone-crushing strength. Jason screamed and yanked, but another hand grabbed his ankle, icy and unrelenting. The lady emerged, dripping wet, her hair plastered across her face. Her mouth stretched open far wider than humanly possible, releasing a scream that echoed across the entire forest. Jason's vision blurred as the sound pierced his skull. With one final desperate pull, Jason managed to drag Emily back onto the shore. The lady hissed, her red eyes burning with fury, before sinking back into the lake. The mark of the lady, Jason thought they had escaped, but when he looked down, his skin crawled. On Emily's wrist, where the lady had grabbed her, a black mark had appeared, like water-soaked veins spreading under her skin. Emily stared at it, horrified. "She won't stop, Jason. She's claimed me. And next she'll claim you." Jason's blood ran cold. For the first time, he realized this wasn't just a haunting. This was a curse. a curse that had only just begun. The nights grew colder in Ravenswood, and Jason knew something was horribly wrong. Emily's condition had worsened. The black mark on her wrist was no longer just a bruise. It had spread like veins crawling up her arm, pulsing as though alive. She barely ate, barely slept, and her once bright eyes now reflected a hollow emptiness. Sometimes, Jason swore he could hear water dripping from her skin, though she hadn't gone near the lake since that night. The whispers in the dark adjacent began keeping watch over her, staying awake as long as he could. But no matter how hard he tried, he kept waking in the middle of the night to the sound of whispers. They weren't Emily's voice. They were soft, broken voices, like echoes rising from deep underwater. "One of you must stay, the debt must be paid." One night, Jason woke to find Emily standing by the window. Her eyes were closed, her lips moving soundlessly. She pressed her hand against the glass, and water droplets appeared, trickling down the pane. When Jason shook her awake, she collapsed in his arms, whispering, "She's inside me, Jason. She won't let go." Desperate for answers, terrified, Jason went back to the old storekeeper in town. The man hesitated but finally revealed the truth. The Lady of Hollow Lake wasn't just a restless spirit. She was bound to the lake by a curse of betrayal. Centuries ago, she had been promised love, but instead, she was abandoned and drowned. Her rage fed the waters, and now anyone who crossed her path became part of her revenge. "The mark means she's chosen Emily," the old man said gravely. "Once the mark spreads to her heart, she won't be herself anymore. She'll belong to the lady." Jason felt sick. There has to be a way to stop it. The man shook his head. "There is only one way. A life must be offered to the lake. Either Emily or you." The return to Hollow Lake, Jason refused to believe it. But the more he watched Emily wither away, the clearer it became. The lady wasn't waiting anymore. She was pulling Emily back to the water. On the 7th night, Emily disappeared from her house. Jason found the front door wide open, muddy footprints leading toward the forest. He followed them, his chest pounding with dread. The path led straight to Hollow Lake. The air was heavy, suffocating. As Jason approached the water's edge, Emily stood at the shore, her dress soaked, her hair dripping though no rain had fallen. She turned slowly, her eyes glowing faint red. "She's calling me, Jason," Emily whispered. "I can't fight her anymore." Before Jason could reach her, the lake erupted. The lady rose from the black water, her skeletal hands outstretched, her mouth opening wider than humanly possible. Her voice was a hiss of pure hatred. "Betrayal must be paid. One of you stays forever." The choice. Jason grabbed Emily's arm, but the mark had spread across her chest now, dark veins snaking toward her heart. She gasped in pain, collapsing into his arms. The lady hovered above the water, her twisted smile widening. Jason knew the truth. If he didn't act, Emily would be gone forever. Tears burned his eyes as he looked at her pale face. "I won't lose you," he whispered. The lady stretched her hands toward them, waiting. Jason's heart raced. The choice was clear: sacrifice Emily or offer himself. Jason closed his eyes, holding Emily tight. He took a step closer to the lake, and as the cold water lapped against his feet, the lady's grin grew wider. The icy waters of Hollow Lake licked against Jason's shoes as he stood at the edge, holding Emily close. Her breaths were shallow, her pulse faint. The black veins from the curse pulsed beneath her skin, creeping toward her heart. Above them, the Lady of Hollow Lake loomed, her blood-red eyes glowing in the mist, her voice echoing across the water like broken glass. "One of you stays, one of you pays. Betrayal must be avenged." Jason's heart raced. He knew there was no escape. Every step he took toward the water felt like stepping into a grave. Jason's decision. Emily's lips moved weakly. "Don't, Jason, please." But Jason couldn't let her die. She had followed him here out of curiosity, not malice. It was his choice that had brought her to this cursed place. If anyone had to stay, it would be him. He gently placed her down on the ground, brushing her wet hair from her face. Live, Emily. No matter what happens to me, live. With trembling legs, Jason stepped into the lake. The water clutched at his ankles, then his knees, icy cold like claws dragging him under. The lady's twisted smile widened as she reached out, welcoming him into her eternal prison. The twist, but just as Jason was about to surrender, the lady froze. Her glowing eyes shifted toward Emily, who had suddenly risen to her feet. The mark on her chest blazed with a violent red light. Emily's face twisted in agony as she screamed, her voice not her own, but layered with the haunting echo of the lady herself. "You think you can take him from me? You think you can escape?" Jason stared in shock. Emily wasn't just cursed, she was becoming the vessel. The lady wasn't after him. She had wanted Emily all along. The lady's spirit split, half in the water, half inside Emily. Her body jerked violently as the two fought for control. The possession, Emily's eyes snapped open, glowing crimson. Her voice was no longer hers. "I am no longer bound to the lake. I walk in flesh again." Jason stumbled back, horrified. The lady had tricked him. The curse wasn't about sacrifice. It was about resurrection. She had used Emily as her host. The lake bubbled furiously as if in rage, no longer able to contain the spirit it once imprisoned. Shadows swirled across the surface, and the entire forest seemed to tremble. Jason's voice cracked.
"Emily, fight her, please!"
For a moment, Emily's true voice broke through. "Jason, run." But then the lady's laughter drowned her out, echoing across the night. The final confrontation, Jason knew running wasn't an option. If the lady escaped into the world through Emily, no one would be safe. He had to end it here, even if it meant losing Emily forever. He remembered the storekeeper's words, a life must be offered to the lake. Maybe if he could force the lady back into the water, the curse could be sealed again. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jason lunged forward, grabbing Emily around the waist. She thrashed violently, her nails cutting into his skin, her voice shifting between Emily's desperate pleas and the lady's cruel laughter. With a cry, Jason dragged her toward the water's edge. The lake roared like a living thing, waves rising unnaturally high as if hungry to reclaim its mistress. Jason tightened his grip, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Emily." And with one final push, he threw them both into the lake. The ending, the water closed over their heads with a violent splash. Darkness swallowed Jason instantly. He could feel the lady's grip tightening, her whispers filling his mind, trying to drown his will. But then, silence. When the lake stilled, only Emily's body floated back to the surface. Her chest rose weakly as she gasped for air. The mark was gone. Jason was nowhere to be seen. The lady had been dragged back into her watery grave, sealed once more, but at a terrible cost. Jason had taken her place. Epilogue: weeks later, Emily sat by Hollow Lake, her eyes empty with grief. Locals whispered that she was never the same again. She claimed to hear Jason's voice whenever she stood by the water's edge, calling her name from beneath the surface. On the lake's still nights, when the moon was high and the mist crept low, villagers swore they saw a figure standing knee-deep in the water. Not the lady, but Jason, his eyes glowing faint red, his mouth whispering the same cursed words. "Betrayal must be paid."